Still some believe it's right to say in the name of Jesus when you pray. We are humankind of 7 billion. So many different races and religions, but it all comes down to one. Some say God's a hymn, God's a hymn. Still many believe that He is a her, He's a her. Does God live in our hearts, or is she somewhere out there in the universe? We are a humankind of 7 billion. So many different races and religions, and it all comes down to one. How far will we have to go before we learn the lesson? Gandhi was a Hindu, Martin Luther King a Christian. Regardless of religion, they knew love was the mission, and it all comes down to one. Is there no God at all? Or a pantheon of gods up in the skies? We can heal our broken hearts if we give up the desire to be right. We are humankind of 7 billion. So many different races and religions, and we all want the same things: health, love, prosperity, and peace. Tolerance is the seed, and the gift of pure acceptance is the tree. We are humankind of 7 billion. So many different races and religions, and it all comes down to one. Whether you were red, brown, yellow, black, or white, man with a husband or a woman with a wife, we can debate until the end of time who's wrong and who is right, or we can see ourselves as one. 'Cause it all comes down to we are humankind of 7 billion. So many different races and religions, and it all comes down to one.
That was great. Oh, that's some fancy picking back there, Brian. Whoa. So you might wonder, what are you doing? Oh, we're just helping ourselves. A little refreshment. We're going to do an object lesson. Concluding the world religions, the water, the very hot water, is the truth. It's God. And it comes into different vessels, different beings, in different locations in the world, different corners of the world, different cultures, different flavors of people. So I've been a missionary early on in different places. And you walk into some countries and you don't recognize that same faith that you knew. So these are different teas, and they look different. Got some matcha tea, too. We just threw it out last service, so if you want some tea, you can come up here next time. Here we go. There we go. Maybe a little more. Make it a little stronger. There we go. But what about the coffee drinkers? Poor guys. Okay, here we go. We got some coffee coming right up. Oh, yeah. It's going to be nice and strong. Is that cowboy coffee where you just throw it in? And some people want to call it Turkish coffee. I love Turkish coffee. So, the different things here, the truth comes in, and almost immediately, the truth doesn't look exactly the same. Words are linear, and God is ineffable, indescribable, inexplainable. And so in our languages, we try to describe God, and through the culture, sometimes it comes out with different meanings. But in the beginning, it was all the same. Clear, pure truth. These different religions that we've been studying, it all started out with the same truth. You know, if you sat down Jesus, the Buddha, any one of the great writers of the Upanishads, you get any of these master teachers, avatars together, they would not argue. They've been saying the same thing. But in our culture, you know, it's like Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff. You know, choose your color, grab your pom-poms, and stand in line. You know, but the great teachers would never argue one over the other. It's just where one's understanding is at. Does that make sense? You know, some of the other common threads. Well, by the way, when you read the Gospel of John, I particularly like this because the Greeks wrote John. They were students of John the Apostle. And they were students of him in Ephesus, and they had had a lot of Greek training, education. And when they spoke of Jesus, they talked about the clear window to God. If you want to know what God looks like, it's a clear window. And so they were painting a picture of this clear, not opaque, not colored, but pure. And so they wanted people to understand that this truly was the light of God. To see an avatar in the flesh and to have heard that person speaking profound truth without the filters. So, but there's other commonalities that we see in these. And one I was looking at is there's a common thread of what the Hindu calls samsara. In Buddhism, it's dukkha. In Christianity, it's called suffering. And in Islam, it's called jihad. Struggle, difficulty, friction. That's hot water. On the molecular level, those molecules are moving because they're hot. And so this is happening fast. If it was cold water, there wouldn't be nearly the spread. So in the early Christianity, when there was oppression, Christianity spread throughout the region because people were being hunted. And so under tension, expansion occurs. But in all of this, and this happens in countries, communities, in personal relationships, there's conflict. What do we do about that? We stress, we worry, we get anxious. Our sphere of influence is only this much. And we feel tension, and we feel frustration. You know, Jesus said, hey, the kingdom is within you. It's within you. There's something I read. I'm going to do an abbreviated version of this when I talked about Hinduism. It was from Houston Smith. And this is the nutshell kernel. Dreams of utopia misjudge the world's purpose. It is not to rival paradise, but to provide a training ground for the human spirit. The world is the soul's gymnasium. It's school and training field. You know, many of us are wrapped around the axle because this world is not a utopia. And we want it to be a utopia. Because we want it to be a utopia, that is our suffering. Pain is the human experience. Suffering is optional. There are young souls continuously incarnating into this realm. They're not ready to hear advanced spiritual teachings. They're still living in the animal nature, survival. Many places in the world, I mean, I saw Stone Age guys in the Philippines literally wearing G-strings. Their only modern tool was a bola knife, a machete. And they would trade bananas for aspirin. You know, there was no language. It was their own language that maybe 100 people spoke. Incredible. Loincloth, literally. And so those souls aren't ready for advanced theoretical physics. They're just not. And they're maybe several lifetimes away from that. And so we expect the world to be like this. This is heaven. This is heaven. This is totally heaven. There's love here. There's acceptance here. You know, we were talking before service. Somebody's been here just a couple weeks and moved from out of town. And I remember the first time I walked into a Unity church less than 10 years ago. It was September of 2009. I walked into this Unity church and it was like, they didn't care about my story. They loved me. They accepted me. I was home. I don't know how many people have had that experience. It's just, no matter what, I was okay in this place. Loved it. So anyhow, what was he talking about? Okay. Okay, so you ever feel like this dukkha, this suffering? Why is it so stressful? The Buddha talked about the 3 poisons. My attachments, it's got to be my way. It's got to be my way. I know I'm right. I know I'm right. It's got to be my way. Aversions, my fear. I'm afraid of this. If the animal is more dominant in our life, we're going to be more afraid. And then there's naivete. And I think to eliminate naivete, if we take a higher perspective, we can see the grand plan of what's really going on here. Talking about fear, when Kristen was talking about in the prayer about a near-death experience, if you've never talked to somebody that's had a near-death experience, I would encourage you, either read Anita Morjani's book, or I interviewed 6 different people that had near-death experience where they died. That's their body, and they're out here, and the doctors are working on it. You know, it's just, but they were so not attached to the body. And what they were experiencing was utopia. And when those people come back in their body, they've forever lost their fear of death, forever. So fear is no longer a driving force in their life. To be absent from fear, you're free to experience a utopia, but an inner utopia. We want utopia to be in this world, but it ain't going to happen. The ancients have known this. The master teachers have known this. Hawkins says that 93% of Earth's history, there's been a war going on somewhere. That's the nature, that's the animal nature in the nutshell. We still have a dinosaur alive. It lives right back here. And we can snap into dinosaur gear anytime somebody cuts us off on the freeway, man. So what is the purpose of this dukkha? If we can see the world for what it is, if it really truly is the soul's gymnasium, and all this, I had a vision a long time ago about this ridgeline walk. And if you were going to progress spiritually, you got up on the ridgeline where the wind was intense and it was difficult to pass. And in the vision, it was all barefoot. And so you just had to trek this ridgeline, and the weather was difficult, and the terrain got steeper and steeper and steeper as you got up. But down in the trees, because you're above the tree line. You could see down in the trees little houses in the woods, little smoke coming out the chimney. We can check out, and we can go to our little ashrams, and we can check out and get off the ridge line and slow down advancing consciousness. Or I'm a believer in karma. I think that every decision is undoing negative karma and granting and creating positive karma. I had some phenomenal karma coming into this lifetime. I know it. I made a lot of mistakes in this life, and all of a sudden grace just went whoosh. And I felt like I didn't deserve grace, but grace saw me through some really killer times. And, a couple of times, just an overdose where I literally, one day I went to my math class, opened up my math book, and it was all gone. I had washed away all my short-term memory. I couldn't remember anything in the math book, and I had to drop the class. Someday I'm going to show you my brain scans. You'll know what I'm talking about. Grace. So I had a macaroon between services. I still have coconut in my mouth. If there's any left, I'm going to get another. So if we can see the world for what it really is, hopefully we won't experience suffering and dukkha. Perhaps we can live in an inner utopia. And I think the purpose of life here on the earth is basically it's a rock tumbler. We're working out our stuff. What's being created is beautiful, but it requires some heat, some friction, some contact with other people. When we're in contact with other people, we accelerate our growth because we have more conflicts per day. Every time there's a conflict, there's an opportunity to grow or to get buried by it. We choose total freedom. If we look at the world of cause and effect, we're really susceptible to victimhood. If you know that nothing out there can cause you bliss or a negative experience, this was this genius of Viktor Frankl. If you don't know his story, he was being cut up and tortured in a Nazi prison camp, and he said, I'm free. Up here, they cannot control me. I'm free. In any experience, no matter what's going on, we are free. Nothing can cause me to feel a certain way. I am suffering because I believe something should be different. That's an attachment. If I can let go of my attachment and say, you know what, that's the way it is, that gives me the opportunity to experience utopia in my heart. Like Jesus said, the kingdom is within. So utopia, I see utopia all over the place, but it's an internal one. When we get together, it's pretty fun. We get to engage and we get to celebrate. Coming together here at Unity Church of the Hills is a celebration. There's so much happiness, so many laughs, and sometimes tears. I remember visiting a dear brother in the hospital recently, and we went from laughing to crying to laughing to crying to laughing to crying. That is life. And it wasn't suffering. It was beautiful. It was just so sweet. That's why I get to do what I do, I guess. I think that's why I ever wanted it. I got to see really cool stuff happen in people's lives, and I wanted to see it. I wanted to witness it. This is not source. We all have our own, I don't want to say it wrong. You don't need the sage on the stage to teach you things. Everybody has direct connection to the divine. When this flavor no longer works for us, I remember running out of truth when I was at this one church for a while, and then they were getting down on a certain ethnic group, or not an ethnic group, but a certain religious group, or a certain gender preference group, or whatever. But I was like, that flavor no longer works for me. So I started working my way down the spectrum of Christianity, and I ran out of runway. But I got to say, I love the positives in Christianity. The other day when I spoke about Christianity at the top of this series, I think unity is just like Christianity was in the first 200-300 years. There was no fear. There was no teachings of guilt. It didn't exist. It was many centuries later that this doctrine of guilt began. But the experience of the presence of God is love and peace, and out of that we express joy. How can you not? It's just pure light. So anyhow, we always have the opportunity to go directly to source and get fresh, pure truth again. No matter where we are, what's going on, we always have that opportunity. Ooh, that looks really good. Should I go for the coffee? All sorts of grit in my teeth. Looks like I had Oreos. So this, I think the purpose and the intention, if you could say that the divine had an intention, it was that we grow and we move out of the animal nature into the spirit. And so that we're free to experience love, peace, joy all the time. We can live in utopia. It's our choice. Nothing outside of us can impact us or change us. But there were seasons in my life where I didn't want any of it. I just wanted to retreat and be under my own little monastery of one or whatever. Do we have that lesson, 182? This is the cry of our hearts. When we have a spiritual connection and we yearn for it, if we haven't felt it in a while, there's a thing inside of us. The title of this lesson 182 in the Course in Miracles is, I will be still an instant and go home. Our hearts want to go home. And this is a beautiful lesson in the Course in Miracles. This world you seem to live in is not home to you. A memory of the home keeps haunting you, as if there were a place that called you to return. You feel an alien here. And that is so true for me sometimes. I shared earlier that, I've been both a custodian and a minister in a church, and it's a lot more fun to be a custodian. It's way more fun. And there's just no stress. And you get to hear celebration, practice, it is great. But there's stuff going on in the world, and we can get very frustrated. And for those of us that really feel serious tension, ask Spirit, what's mine to do about it? There's many authors and PhDs and master's degrees in this community, many writers. And if perhaps it's what you're being called to do is to write a commentary to help. Maybe somebody will read that and see a different position. But if we do this, and if we do it with angst or frustration or anger, there's going to be resistance, because it's going to be force, not power. Force is from the ego, and it's animal nature, and it wants to tear at another person. Power is from the divine, and it's unlimited, and it radiates like the sun. It falls on everybody without shadow. And so if what we're being called to do is to make a change in the world, I would encourage you to do it with love. Do it with grace. Do it with mercy. Do it with tenderness. Unity's fifth principle is it's not just enough to know it, but you got to do it. And there's a part of me that would want to say, take the 12th step in and say, now share it. But don't share it coming from a place of I know, or a place of pride, out of love, out of service, out of compassion, to alleviate human suffering, to take people out of the dukkha, of the suffering, to realize the utopia is within them, not outside of them. And man, we almost went to war the other day. Many people were afraid that we would, be brought into another conflict. But outside of my sphere of influence, I can't do anything except I can pray. And quantum physics is proving prayer works. So we always have access to prayer. I'm alive because my grandma's prayed for me, as it was revealed to me one day. There's grace. And so, so when we're in a situation and we go to Spirit and Spirit says, yes, do something. So whenever we do it with love and patience. If we're impatient, that's not of love. And I'm very guilty of that. I can be very impatient and try to go right to the end, and it's not considerate. Love is patient. And if we debate, we're just going to deal with their animal nature, and they're going to resist, and there's going to be tension. Okay, the second one. These are the takeaways, by the way. You like the takeaways? Everything that happens can advance consciousness. Do you believe that? I really believe that life is a rock tumbler, and if we understand that, then we're no longer naive. And the Buddha would say we'd be free of suffering if we can understand that this world is not to be a utopia, but it's a place where we grow from animals to light, angelic beings. That's the progression. The divinization of man is what the ancients called it. Man becoming divine. That's the process. And the third one is be attached to God, not belief systems. These are belief systems, and we take a drink of them as we will. They're all good. There's truth everywhere. There's truth everywhere. We want to honor all pathways to God. I don't want to pick on my Christian friends. Man, I tell you, life is good. We learned a lot from our Christian brothers last month. It was amazing. It's good when we engage, when we do these interfaith things with the I-Act. This series has been just delightful to bring all these great teachers in here to share their love with us. And we know that that's God, right? Bless you all. Amen.
Thanks for joining us today. And if you like the message, we invite you to like it, share it, and please subscribe.
We are a New Thought church where lives are transformed. So come on, check us out at unityhills.org.
Namaste.